Hello everyone, in Psychedelics news for the Friday session in Maryland. Maryland House gives initial approval to Senate-passed bill to fund psychedelics research and access for veterans. The Maryland House of Delegates on Friday gave initial approval to a Senate-passed bill that would create a state fund to provide cost-free access to psychedelics like psilocybin, MDMA, and ketamine for military veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and traumatic brain injury. The legislation from Senator Sarah Elfreth, D., advanced on a voice vote on the second reading one day after the House Appropriations Committee passed it. Assuming that delegates don't adopt any amendments on a third reading vote, which is expected soon, the bill would then head to the desk of Governor Larry Hogan, R. There was no discussion of the bill on the floor on Friday, but Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Maggie McIntosh, D., and other lawmakers did talk about its provisions and potential during Thursday's panel voting session. McIntosh said that she'd watched a 60-minute segment featuring military veterans who'd used certain psychedelics to treat symptoms of PTSD and anxiety. She said, "It was incredible what the transformation was in the use of these drugs, and it's giving a lot of people now some real hope that they can do the treatment." Another member said that the alarming rate of veteran suicide is an issue that has touched all of us, and anything we can do, conventionally or we should be doing. This latest action also comes days after the Maryland legislature agreed to put marijuana legalization on the state's November ballot and sent the governor complementary legislation concerning initial rules for the program if voters approve the policy change. The psychedelics proposal would establish what's being called the Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder and Traumatic Brain Injury Alternative Therapies Fund. It stipulates that money from that fund must be used to study the use of alternative therapies for veterans with PTSD and traumatic brain injuries. The Appropriations Committee on Monday took testimony on the legislation, with the sponsor pointing to ongoing trials exploring the benefits of psychedelics at Johns Hopkins University, located in Maryland, and other research institutions. Last month, the panel also considered nearly identical companion legislation sponsored by Del. Seth Howard, R. Members at the time adopted several amendments to more closely align the legislation in both chambers, though that legislative vehicle did not advance of the crossover deadline, with the focus now being on the similar Senate bill. The bill seeks to provide cost-free access to psychedelics for eligible veterans. The State Department of Health would be required to periodically consult with the Department of Veterans Affairs, Johns Hopkins University, the University of Maryland, Sheppard Pratt Hospital, and the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. The purpose of the partnerships would be to determine the effectiveness of and a method for improving access to alternative therapies for treating PTSD and traumatic brain injury in veterans. They would also consult on appropriate uses of the fund that further the fund's purpose. The department would need to first submit a report to the governor and legislation with initial findings and recommendations by December 1, 2022. 2 years later, there would be another deadline for findings and recommendations that are based on studies that were specifically funded through the PTSD Fund. The recommendations would focus on budgetary, legislative, or regulatory changes to expand access to alternative therapies for veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injuries, the bill text states. For the fiscal year 2024, the bill calls for the governor to include $1 million in an annual budget bill for the fund. Maryland is one of the numerous states where psychedelics reform is being taken up this session. For example, a Colorado House committee on Tuesday approved a bill aligning state statutes to legalize MDMA prescriptions if and when the federal government ultimately permits such use. However, the House Public and Behavioral Health and Human Services Committee also rejected separate legislation to create a psychedelics review panel to study substances like psilocybin and DMT and issue recommendations on possible policy changes. So there we have it folks, and the good news is for veterans. Let's hope they can get it done ASAP.